Okay, I'm going to move on to World War III. And what I'm going to talk about first is the idea of this is a great clip. The U.S. has been talking, and the coalition Axis of Evil affiliate countries has been talking about investigating Syria and Russia for war crimes, which is the ultimate absurdity. And I have this great clip. I was almost going to lead the show off with it. And it's about that item. And this is a great reporter. I really love it. So I'm going to switch to that right now.
Over the weekend, there was this airstrike on a funeral by the Saudi-led coalition, and I'm just wondering, does the administration see any difference between this kind of thing and what?
Okay, before he says it, there was an airstrike on something by the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen. Okay, that's what he brought up first. He was a little quiet. So I'm going to play it from the beginning again, just so you can hear it. And then he asked to compare it with the Saudi bombing. He asked to compare it with the U.S. claims against Syria and Russia. So let me just play it.
Over the weekend, there was this airstrike on a funeral by the Saudi-led coalition. And I'm just wondering, does the administration see any difference between this kind of thing and what you accuse the Russians and the Syrians and the Iranians of doing in Syria, particularly Aleppo?
Well, yeah, I think there are
Other than
some
support the
differences.
Saudi coalition and don't support the Syrians and Russians? What are the other differences?
Well, look, there's a couple things, Matt.
Pause.
You don't think that, despite the fact that no investigation has been completed yet, you're sure that this was not deliberate?
Despite the fact that no investigation has been completed yet, is what he said. Are you sure this wasn't deliberate? And that's regarding the Saudi strike. He's just a little quiet. So
You said that the Russian and Syrian attacks are deliberate.
They are.
Okay.
They are.
But
What I'm saying is that,
maybe I'm wrong on this, but do you not regard the Russian call for an investigation into the attack on the aid convoy as a real thing?
well,
okay, so I'm sorry. I feel like I have to fill this in just to say what he's saying. He's saying that the Russians asked for an independent investigation on the aid convoy bombing, which is part of the reason that we're investigating them for war crimes. So he's saying the Saudi thing, even though there's been no investigation, we've decided it's not intentional. And yet the UN bombing thing, the Russians want to investigate. And he's saying, what's the difference is basically the question. So, and that long pause is the reason I played this. I just think it's amazing. I might even play that again, but here's how it ends up.
they can point to how real it is. I've also seen they flip-flopped, right? First they said they wanted an investigation, then they pulled it back. So it's not exactly been a clarion call for an investigation. And what we're seeing in Aleppo is nothing but a concerted effort over recent days to take that city by force, to subdue it by force. This isn't indiscriminate, haphazard, accidental bombing of infrastructure. It's very deliberate.
So implicitly, when he says that, this isn't haphazard or accidental bombings of infrastructure or whatever, basically like we're doing ours. So even though that's not exactly how he meant it, he didn't mean to say we're just haphazardly bombing things. He's saying that it's not like the Russians are haphazardly bombing stuff. They're doing it intentionally, but we're the ones haphazardly bombing stuff, not intentionally. It's okay that we're doing it because it's not on purpose. We bomb hospitals and we bomb the Syrian army, but it's not on purpose. The Russians and Syrians are doing it on purpose. And that's why we have the moral high ground on this. I mean, should I play it at the beginning and have that long pause, Jay? That to me was really the whole thing to me, where he's like, what's the difference between the Saudis bombing that and what's going on in Aleppo? And he's like, well, I'm gonna play it again. I just have to because I
Over the
thought it was
weekend,
so great.
There was this airstrike on a funeral by the Saudi-led coalition, and I'm just wondering, does the administration see any difference between this kind of thing and what you accuse the Russians and the Syrians and the Iranians of doing in Syria, particularly Aleppo?
Well, yeah, I think there are
Other than
some
support the
differences.
Saudi coalition and don't support the Syrians and Russians? What are the other differences?
Well, look, there's a couple things, Matt.
Well, I
Don't
mean,
think that- just
I mean that's crazy to me. Just that long pause. Well, there is. And he looks down at his shoes. Basically, there is something different. Let me tell you about it.
I mean, they know they're lying.
You know,
they know it.
it's
They know
crazy.
they're evil.
It's crazy to see that, I feel like. I really want to play next. Let me just show an article real quick. Assad says that Aleppo is a springboard to liberate Syria, quote unquote. It's a biased article, just like everything on CNN, but at least they reported on what he actually said. So he says it's going to be a springboard as a big city to move to other areas, to liberate other areas from the terrorists. This is the importance of Aleppo now. So he just basically says, like Russia's saying, that it's necessary. The work they're doing is to get out the terrorists. The city is kind of admittedly under siege, but they're doing their best as far as they're concerned while maintaining the military effort to provide humanitarian resources and potential for people to escape, keeping in mind that, you know, if they're too open about it, then that's going to allow the enemy to gain an advantage through those means. So that's warfare, and that's what we started in Syria, and that's how warfare works. So to expect any different would be silly. It wouldn't be reasonable. I want to play Putin's response to it. His response about the UN thing and about the Americans in general. I think this is a good clip from RT, our friends at Russia Today.
Russia is now being blamed in all crimes without any proof. Let's just take, for example, the attack on the humanitarian aid convoy. We know who
Okay,
hit
I
it.
have to say something.
It was one
here.
of the.
I got to say something here. I'm going to show you my screen, Jay, so you can. You can see it right now. You'll be able to see it in the preview. Look at the screen I stopped on. Do you see it? Jay?
No.
You don't see it yet because it's still catching up? Well, anyway, Vladimir's here with he's just got his legs spread wide open. You look how everybody else is sitting. They've all got they don't all have their legs crossed, but look at him. He's like, seriously, he's like I wonder if I could mimic it. Like he slumps down. He's got his legs spread out and he's all leaning to the side. I just think he's so cool.
Are you some forensic body analysis person?
I
right
just
now?
think
I
he's
could barely
cool.
see him. How did you point that out?
I just think the way he sits, he's like a gunslinger, you know?
He's so-
Everybody else
oh
got their
my
legs crossed and stuff.
God.
He's got his legs wide open. Like, he's like the boss.
Yeah.
I'm starting to like understand why it's funny that he goes out and plays hockey and scores like 12 goals. Like nobody in Russia takes that seriously. You know, it's just funny. It'd be funny if Barack Obama went out and played football, they'd let him score 10 touchdowns, you know, because it's the president.
Wait, no, but that's not the same thing. Because Vladimir actually, he's like fit. He can do things.
Yeah, but
He
so's
like
Obama.
surfs, and
Obama's fit.
Obama plays golf,
Well,
and
okay.
that's gross.
All right. Yeah, we don't believe in golf. Let me actually play what was newsworthy here and quit with the chit chat. Here we go.
Convoy. We know who hit it.
Oh, here. Let's start from the beginning. UN convoy.
Russia is now being blamed in all crimes without any proof. Let's just take, for example, the attack on the humanitarian aid convoy. We know who hit it. It was one of the terror organizations on the ground. And we clearly know that the Americans are aware of this as well. But they prefer blaming Russia without proof. That's clearly not what can help the situation. This manner of acting at an international level is called pressuring and blackmailing. But with Russia, that has never worked and never will work.
Boy, I thought he brought it with that too. He is a real leader, I think, a bit of a gunslinger. And the funny thing is, though, I think about that convoy bombing is I don't think it happened at all. I feel like it was just a total setup or a total, normal false flag kind of event. So, and I wonder, I have been wondering if Putin plays along a little bit. Like he must know, like he must have known the Ataturk bombing wasn't really a bombing. Otherwise, because it would have security implications for him if it were. So he would look into it and find out that it was an inside job or some kind of false flag. So I wonder why he doesn't call that out. And I kind of assume it's because it's like, the intelligence communities together have decided, they don't want to call each other out on their own psyops, because then they're calling out the fact that, these psyops are happening and they don't want to disclose their methods, for when they want to use them, for like the Russian airport bombings. That's my theory on that stuff, because that's why he says it was a terrorist group, even though it was probably either Americans or didn't happen. That's my thoughts on it.
Well, terrorist group is just kind of like the synonym for American now, isn't it?
No kidding. Axis of evil. I've been saying it for a while. The axis of evil. We are the world's global terrorists, or we support, the regimes that export the most terrorism. It's not Iran. I mean, it's Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Those folks that fund the Clinton Foundation, which is why it was great to hear Trump talking about that too. It's those countries in the Middle East, and we're supporting. We're going after Yemen now on behalf of our friends in Saudi Arabia. Now we're going after Yemen with them and starting another conflict on another stage, going in a little bit at a time. First, it's just, missiles at their so-called communications towers. Now, I know why they do the communications thing, because they don't want the word getting out. I realize that's what goes on. They isolate you within the country, so that people can't hear you on the outside. And that's why they have this campaign against Russia Today, against RT, blaming Russia for everything and saying they're trying to influence the election. That's the first step down the road to getting them kicked off the internet, and the way Obama's talking about fact checking and people having a reliable source for information, and the problem being all this false information out there and people being able to believe whatever they want. I could see a campaign to get RT off the web and out of our lives, with the justification that it's trying to influence a foreign government, trying to influence a U.S. election, which is ironic then, especially with the Carlos Slim, controversy, which is what I titled this thing. I totally forgot. Jay, what's up? You've been waiting to talk?
Yeah, I had like a bunch of thoughts.
Go ahead.
Now,
Did I stump you again?
one being with this whole ISIS thing, I said to someone the other day, who asked me, why are we going to go to war with Russia? And I was like, well, because we're funding ISIS and ISIS is fighting Russia and Syria. And they're like, what do you mean we're funding ISIS?
Right.
And I think it's funny that I have to explain it to people, like, because we've seen this happen before. Like, we have seen the American government create an enemy, think 2001 in the 9/11 Commission,
Right.
who we framed for that, the WMDs that we made up for that, the invasion that we had after that. was all for a very similar reason, which was destabilizing Iraq and Afghanistan. And now we already did it with Libya, and we had a hand in Egypt, and we're literally destabilizing the Middle East country by country until we can finally take Iran, whatever. Who
Right.
knows?
And we did the same in South
And
America before that, and it's moving into
yeah,
Africa too.
but like this, if you buy into the Albert Pike Three World Wars plan, which is pretty convincing,
Well, that's
I,
in the Chronicles of Narnia, the Chronicles of the Elders of Zion. That's that same idea, that same plan. That's what is detailed in there. It's almost exactly the same. Three world wars and dumbing down the population and all
Chronicles of
that stuff.
Narnia.
Chronicles of
I'm
the
talking about one
Chronicles
of the
of the Elders
freaking.
of Zion. The Chronicles of the
Oh,
Elders of Zion. You should look
okay,
into it. It's a famous thing from like
cool.
1890 something.
The point is, whether or not ISIS exists and we're funding it, we're doing damage to destabilize the Middle East purposely. Oops, sorry. Um,
And that's what we've
it,
done over time too. I mean,
yeah, but it's crazy to me how so many liberals don't seem to be able to understand this, and I don't mean like it's so weird with definitions now, but people who are going to vote for Hillary Clinton don't understand what we're doing. And it's the same people who were upset about the Iraq war and the same people who, think Bush is a war criminal don't understand how Hillary and Obama are. It's only positive things about the Obamas and just a complete disregard for what Hillary is going to do and has already done in the Middle East.
right, right. Well, and you're saying that people can't understand. I was talking to a guy, gosh, like last year maybe, on Facebook when I still tried to engage people. I was like, we created ISIS, or at a minimum, we fund them. And there have been newspaper articles, on The Guardian and some other places where they actually said, there are reasons to believe that one way or another, whether you say directly or indirectly, but, and our friends in Turkey, Erdogan's son was dealing in ISIS oil, which directly funded ISIS. You can't have a movement without money, and money doesn't just drop out of the sky. You have to you have to have resources, which is why when Putin came in 48 hours, he knocked out a bunch of oil fields and stuff and ISIS oil trucks and did a bunch of damage that we couldn't do over years. Which is just, understandable given that we've been supporting the destabilization. And we're showing it more than ever. I've been saying and others have been saying that it's always been about Assad. And people were like, oh, no, we got to beat ISIS. And now the facts come out. We help out with an ISIS attack on a Syrian army position. I mean, it comes out and then do people believe it then? We were talking about it a long time ago. It's always been about Assad. It's never been about anything else, and people don't believe it. People are like, what? We didn't fund ISIS. Are you crazy, you conspiracy theorist?
And that argument would hold a lot more sway if all of the conspiracy theories that we've all been talking about for years weren't coming true right
Right.
before our eyes. When I saw that Hillary literally said that her dream is for a borderless,
Right.
like I don't remember the exact words, but I was like, oh
Open
wow,
borders,
yeah,
open trade.
open borders, open trade,
Yeah.
one world order. Here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and I guess hopefully that's what convinces people is that, people have been saying this stuff for a long time. They didn't believe it, but look how the world works. And you have to think to yourself, the nice thing about this is why they say crazy people go to conspiracy theories, because it puts the world in order. You can blame people for how fucked up your life. Oh man. Boy, Jay, I just broke my own rule. All right, I'm sorry for reprimanding you. You can blame.
pathos.
Oh God, I am
It shows pathos. That's
pathological.
good.
I'm pathological. You're right. So you can blame something for how bad your life is, but it's not that. It's that it puts your life it puts things in order, understanding that there's a plan that is making things messed up. Not some just random coincidence or basically thinking that God doesn't exist, that God doesn't love you, because otherwise things would make sense, but if you can actually make sense out of it, and you can't. That's what I mean is when you predict stuff and it comes true, and then you can tie it back to certain criminals and dark entities. Then you at least know what's going on. You know that you're not crazy, and that the world isn't actually crazy on its own. That God isn't doing this on his own, or it's not a reflection of God's creation. You know what I mean? It's an evil plot. It's an evil plot screwing things up, but it's not you, and you don't have to participate in the evil plot. So I guess that's a side note. Back to Syria. I wanted to say what the British are saying about this, particularly Boris Johnson, who has, I should have known he was a scumbag because he's got that stupid hair thing going on. He's like bald or something, and he's got whatever the style is to be able to cover it forward. He just looks like a bobblehead or like a troll doll. He looks like a troll
Wait,
doll.
are you saying, of course, you don't distrust him because he looks like a bobblehead troll?
I should have known that he was a scumbag by looking at his hair, is what I'm saying. Because people that do comb overs and think that people aren't onto their, aren't smelling their stink, that they don't actually have hair under there. People who do that, I think, are not trustable because they don't understand reality. You don't understand reality if you think the comb over is getting you, is really believable, that people really believe there's hair under there naturally. So that to me indicates it's a sign of untrustworthiness. So let's listen to this untrustworthy comb over chia pet troll doll. Let's hear what he has to say about Russia. How
You're
serious
body
he is.
shaming.
All right.
Body
we're gonna play
shaming.
it. We're going to play it right now.
Coming to the questions that have been raised by the Right Honourable Lady and repeatedly by members in the course of this debate. Many members have said how strongly they want this country to go further. And the Honourable Member for Tunbridge Wells and others have spoken about no-fly zones or no bombing zones. And I have every sympathy with those ideas and for the motives behind them. And we must work through all these types of options together with our allies, given that I think this House is not committed to putting boots on the ground. But we cannot commit to a no-fly zone unless we are prepared to confront and perhaps, as my honourable friend behind me has already said, as for New Forest, we cannot do that unless we are prepared to shoot down planes or helicopters that violate that zone. And we need to think.
I have to stop on this guy. And then we'll talk about what he said. Hold on, let me rewind 10 seconds. You got to see. I love what they do in the parliament. I just love I love how they talk to each other and they grunt and mumble. And then the way they sit, you can even see the one guy kind of leaning over. But you got to see when he gets to the climactic moment of his speech. This guy, they show this guy. Hold on.
For New Forest, we cannot do that unless we are prepared to shoot down planes or helicopters that.
There he is. That's when he said shoot down. The guy looks like he had a couple sangrias or something at lunch. He's just trying to chill out. The room's spinning a little bit. He's thinking about shooting down Russian jets. That's funny. Anyway, that I thought was amusing on the world stage. We visited Russia and we saw Putin speak in Russian, and we visited the UK and we heard the funny way that they talk. What do you think about, that guy's a war hawk, and that's the way they're talking to each other in these other countries. Are you finally seeing the picture of him sitting there? Did you see?
I love that dude. What a man. What a macho man.
He's just like
that's how
laying back.
Yeah, I've felt like that for a while. Like, I feel like that would be a great meme.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, maybe we could do
wow.
something with it. Shoot down Russian planes. He's like,
It's a mess. It's fun because I feel like there's a giant purging not only of the media but of politics right now. Like you're really going to see who's establishment and who's not. And I'm not saying this has anything really to do with that, but just instances like this
Well,
where there's
yeah,
like
as far as Boris
obvious
Johnson
disdain.
and stuff, and well, I don't know if this is disdain. I think this guy just had a martini or something before the meeting. So I have stuff on
Well,
Wiki.
if he exactly like if he respected what was going on, he wouldn't be looking like that.
I think
Like
that's-
he's like whatever.
I think they show respect different ways in England. I really like. I've been there to the UK. They're pretty funny folks. I like them a lot. That's why I
Okay.
do the show early enough for them to watch in their respective nations.